In a time when Israel had no king and everyone did what seemed right in their own eyes, there lived a woman named Hannah who longed for a child. Though married to Elkanah, she remained barren, and her rival, Peninnah, mocked her for it constantly. Each year, during their trip to the temple at Shiloh, Hannah would pray with deep sorrow, pouring out her heart before the Lord. One particular year, Hannah's prayer was so intense that the priest Eli thought she was drunk. But when she explained her pain and desperation, Eli blessed her. In faith, she made a vow. If God gave her a son, she would give him back to the Lord to serve him all the days of his life. God, in his mercy, answered her prayer. Hannah gave birth to a son and named him Samuel, meaning God has heard. True to her promise, once Samuel was weaned, she took him to Eli at the temple, dedicating him to serve in the house of the Lord. From an early age, Samuel began ministering before God, even as he grew up in a spiritually dark environment. Though he served faithfully under Eli's leadership, corruption surrounded him. Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests who dishonored God through their immoral actions. Yet, in contrast to their wickedness, young Samuel stood out for his devotion. One night, something extraordinary happened. While Samuel was sleeping, he heard someone call his name. Thinking it was Eli, he ran to him, but Eli hadn't called. This happened 3 times until Eli realized that the Lord was speaking. He instructed Samuel to say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." When Samuel responded, God gave him his first prophetic message, a warning of judgment against Eli's house. From that moment on, Samuel's role as a prophet began. As he matured, God's presence remained with him, and all of Israel recognized that he was chosen by the Lord. His words carried weight, and everything he said came to pass. Samuel had become both prophet and judge, a spiritual leader in a time when Israel desperately needed direction. Under Samuel's leadership, Israel began to turn back to God. He called the people to repentance and led a revival at Mizpah, where the Israelites fasted and confessed their sins. When the Philistines tried to attack, Samuel interceded with prayer and sacrifice, and God thundered from heaven, defeating their enemies. The nation knew once again that God was with them. As the years passed and Samuel grew older, the people of Israel came with a troubling request. They wanted a king, like the nations around them. Though Samuel was deeply grieved, God assured him that it wasn't Samuel they were rejecting, but God himself. With a heavy heart, Samuel warned the people of the consequences of having a king, loss of freedom, taxes, and military conscription, but they insisted. Obeying God's instruction, Samuel anointed Saul, a tall and impressive young man, as Israel's first king. At first, Saul seemed humble and promising. But over time, pride and disobedience crept in. He began making decisions without God's direction, including offering sacrifices himself, a role reserved for priests and prophets, and sparing what God had commanded to destroy. When confronted by Samuel, Saul made excuses. But Samuel spoke words that would echo through history. To obey is better than sacrifice. Because of Saul's rebellion, God rejected him as king, and Samuel's heart broke. Though Saul continued to reign, God had already chosen a replacement. Once again, Samuel was sent on a divine mission, this time to the house of Jesse in Bethlehem. Jesse presented his strongest sons, but God reminded Samuel, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then, the youngest son, David, a shepherd boy, was called in. As soon as Samuel saw him, the Lord said, "This is the one." Samuel anointed David, and from that day forward, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. Though Samuel stepped back from public leadership, his influence remained strong. He continued to speak into the lives of Saul, David, and the nation. His wisdom and obedience had laid the foundation for Israel's transition from the time of judges to the era of kings. Eventually, Samuel passed away, full of years and honor. All Israel gathered to mourn him, recognizing his life as one fully dedicated to the Lord. 1 Samuel 25 verse 1. Yet even in death, his presence lingered. In one desperate moment, King Saul consulted a forbidden medium to summon Samuel's spirit. When Samuel appeared, he rebuked Saul and confirmed his downfall, declaring that both he and his sons would die in battle the next day, a prophecy that tragically came true. Samuel's legacy. Samuel's life is a remarkable testimony of faithfulness. From a miraculous birth to a life of prophetic power, he was a man who listened to God when few others did. He was the last of the judges, the first major prophet after Moses, and the man who anointed Israel's first two kings. He was bold, prayerful, obedient, and deeply committed to the Lord. He guided a nation through a critical turning point and helped shape its destiny. Samuel's story reminds us that one person, fully surrendered to God, can change the course of history.